Welcome to Motivational Humanity. You are not alone.
Can I ask you something honest? When was the last time someone asked you, or really asked you, what you were looking forward to? Not what you've done, not what you've been through, not what your children are up to, or how many grandchildren you have. But what are you looking forward to? I'm going to guess it's been a while. And here's the painful truth beneath that silence. Somewhere along the way, maybe without you even noticing, the world quietly stopped asking you that question. And slowly, so slowly, you may have stopped asking it of yourself. If you've ever felt like life's biggest chapters are behind you, if you've ever sat quietly with a kind of grief that's hard to name, not for a person, but for a version of yourself you thought you'd become by now, then this video is for you. Stay with me, because what I'm about to share might change the way you see the rest of your life. I want to take a moment here, before we go anywhere, just to sit with you. You have lived through things that no self-help book could have prepared you for. You have raised children or cared for others when you were running on empty. You have loved people through their worst seasons. You have held families together with your bare hands. You have done the invisible work, the emotional labor, the quiet sacrifice, that nobody put on a performance review or applauded at a dinner table. And you have survived losses that changed the shape of you. Marriages, careers, parents, friends, versions of yourself you thought you'd always be. You are not a woman who needs to be fixed. But I also know, because women write to me, and because I listen, that there is a specific kind of H that can settle in at this stage of life. It doesn't always have a name. It might feel like watching a train pull away and wondering if you were supposed to be on it. It might feel like waking up in a life that fits perfectly fine and still feeling slightly out of place inside it. It might feel like the quiet fear that the most interesting things that will ever happen to you have already happened. That feeling has a name in psychology. Researchers call it stagnation. The opposite of what Erik Erikson, one of the most important developmental psychologists of the last century, described as generativity, the deep human need to keep growing, creating, and contributing in ways that matter. And here is what I want you to know before we go any further, that achy. It is not a sign that your story is over. It is a sign that something in you is still alive. Let's start with something that genuinely surprised me when I first learned it. And I think it will surprise you too. For decades, scientists believed the brain was largely fixed after a certain age, stone growing, set in its ways. But research over the last 30 years has completely overturned that idea. Your brain has something called neuroplasticity, the ability to form new neural connections, build new pathways, and adapt to new experiences. And this doesn't stop at 30 or 50 or even 70. Dr. Michael Merzenich, a neuroscientist at the University of California, has spent his career studying how the brain changes. His work shows that the brain continues to respond to new learning and new experiences throughout our entire lifespan. Think about what that means. You are not a finished product. You are still being written. There's a beautiful metaphor I love for this. Imagine your brain like a forest. When you're young, you're blazing trails through dense wood. Everything is new, everything takes effort. By the time you're in your 60s or 70s, those trails are well worn. You know them. You walk them with ease. But here's what most people miss. You can still cut new trails. It takes intention. It takes a little courage. But the forest is still growing. The trees are still there. New language, new creative practice, new friendships, new ways of seeing an old problem. Every one of these is a new trail in your forest, and your brain responds to every single one of them. You are not too old to learn something new. You are, in fact, at a stage of life where learning something new might be the most radical act of self-love you can offer yourself. Here is a truth that our culture does a very poor job honoring. What you have accumulated over these decades is not just experience. It is wisdom, and wisdom is not the same thing as information. Information is data. Wisdom is knowing what to do with it. A 30-year-old may know about grief. You know what grief smells like at 3 in the morning. You know that it comes in waves, and that the second year is often harder than the first. You know that it eventually, not quickly, but eventually makes room for something else. That knowing. It lives in your body. It cannot be Googled. There is a psychological concept called socio-emotional selectivity theory, developed by Stanford researcher Dr. Laura Carstensen. Her research found something remarkable as people age and become more aware of the finite nature of time. They become better, not worse, at prioritizing what truly matters. They become more emotionally intelligent, more skilled at regulating their feelings, more capable of finding meaning in ordinary moments. In other words, you are not declining. In many of the most important ways, you are refining. Think about a piece of wood that has been worked by a craftsman for years. The grain becomes more visible. The texture deepens. The imperfections become part of what makes it beautiful and distinct. That is you. The woman who has been through what you have been through is not less than who she once was. She is more layered, more textured, more as real. And the world needs that kind of realness right now, perhaps more than it ever has. I want to talk about language for a moment, because the words we use inside our own heads matter more than most of us realize. Carol Dweck, a psychologist at Stanford University, has spent decades studying how people respond to challenge and setbacks. Her research on what she calls the growth mindset versus the fixed mindset comes down to something surprisingly simple: the word yet. When we say, "I can't do this," that is a closed door. When we say, "I can't do this yet," that is a window. The shift sounds small. The psychological impact is enormous. Not yet honors the truth of where you are right now, while refusing to accept that where you are right now is where the story ends. I think about a woman I'll call Miriam. Not her real name, but her story is real. She wrote to me last year. She said she had always wanted to paint. As a young mother, there was never time. As a working woman, there was never space. By the time her children were grown, she told herself it was too late, that she had missed her window. At 68, during a particularly quiet winter, she bought a set of watercolors. She told me, "I was terrible at first, absolutely terrible. But something happened that I didn't expect. I stopped caring about being good. I just cared about doing it." By the time she wrote to me, she had sold 3 pieces at a small local exhibition. Not because she became a professional artist, but because she gave herself permission to say, "not yet," instead of "never." And everything that followed came from that one shift. What is the thing you have been calling never that deserves to be called not yet? There is a fear I hear often, and I want to address it directly. The fear that if you try something new at this stage of life, a new relationship, a new career, a new creative pursuit, a new way of being, that it means all the years before were somehow wrong. That reinvention is a rejection of your past self. It isn't. Reinvention is not erasing who you were. It is building on who you were. In Jungian psychology, drawing on the work of Carl Jung, there is a concept of the second half of life as a fundamentally different journey. In the first half, Jung argued, we build our ego, we establish ourselves, our roles, our identities in the world. In the second half, we are called towards something deeper, something more authentically ourselves. He called it individuation, the process of becoming, over time, more fully who you truly are, not who your parents needed you to be, not who your marriage required, not who your career demanded, but you, the full, unedited, uncensored version of you that has been there all along, waiting for the noise to quiet down enough to be heard. The second half of life, in this framework, is not a consolation prize. It is the real work, the deeper work. I think of it like a river. When a river is young, it is energetic and loud. It crashes over rocks, changes course, moves fast. As it matures, it doesn't slow down because it is weak. It slows down because it has found its banks. It knows where it is going. It moves with intention rather than urgency. You have found your banks. Now you can move with intention. That is not less. That is more. I want to close our lessons with this one because I think it is the most important. Research from Harvard, one of the longest studies on human well-being ever conducted, spanning more than 80 years, came to a remarkably simple conclusion. The single greatest predictor of happiness and health in the second half of life is not wealth, not achievement, not status. It is the quality of your relationships, not the number. The quality, one deep, honest friendship, one community where you feel known, one relationship where you can say how you truly feel and be met with understanding rather than judgment. That is the architecture of a good life at any age. But here is the part that doesn't get said enough. Connection at this stage of life requires intention. In a way it didn't when you were younger. When you were younger, connection happened by proximity: school, work, the neighborhood, the children's school drop-off. Life threw people at you. Now, you may have to reach for it. You may have to be the one who initiates. You may have to join the class, attend the group, send the message first. And that can feel vulnerable. It can feel like exposure. But here is what I believe deeply: vulnerability at this stage of life is not weakness. It is courage in its most mature form. It is the courage to say, I am still here. I still want to connect. I still have things to give and things to receive. Don't let pride or the fear of rejection talk you out of reaching toward the people who could change the texture of your days. You deserve to be known. I want to say something to you before we close. Not as a content creator, not as someone with research to share, but as one human being to another. You are not at the end of something. You are at the beginning of the most authentic chapter of your life. The years behind you were not wasted. They were preparation. Every scar you carry is proof that you survived something. Every loss you've navigated has made you capable of a depth of compassion that cannot be manufactured or hurried. You know what you know because I lived it. And the woman you have become, complex, layered, real, is not someone the world should be finished with. She is someone the world needs more of. There is a beautiful concept in psychology called post-traumatic growth. The idea that human beings, after going through profound difficulty, do not simply return to who they were. They often grow beyond who they were. They discover strength they didn't know they had. They find clarity about what truly matters. They develop a capacity for gratitude and presence that lighter seasons rarely produce. You have been through your difficult seasons. What if the growth that comes from them is still unfolding? What if the best version of you is not behind you in a photograph, but ahead of you, waiting in the choices you make starting today? You get to choose what not yet. You finally give yourself permission to pursue. You get to decide that your becoming is not finished. You get to look at whatever remains of your one precious life and say, I am still here, and I still have something to offer, and I am not done. That is not wishful thinking. That is wisdom. Now I have one question for you, and I really do want your answer. What is the one thing you have been calling as never that you are ready to start calling not yet? It might be a creative dream, a difficult conversation, a friendship you've let drift, a new skill, a place you've always wanted to visit, a way of being with yourself that feels kinder. Whatever it is, drop it in the comments below. And alongside it, I'd love for you to write the words, "Assess, I am reclaiming my peace." Because reclaiming your peace is not passive. It is one of the bravest things a person can do. And when you write those words, you are not just speaking to me. You are saying them to yourself. You are planting something. And things that are planted, even late in the season, still grow. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today. If this video touched something in you, Please share it with a woman in your life who needs to hear it. And I'll see you in the next one.